The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent, except for the soft humming of the translation devices. Captain Minho stood straight and tall in the center of the chamber, his dark uniform showing the marks of many battles. Behind him, Admiral. Yuna kept her hands clasped behind her back, her face showing no emotion even though her heart was beating fast. To their left, Dr. Jiho held a small data device containing all the information about humanity's latest discovery. The chamber itself was enormous, built to make visitors feel small and powerless. The ceiling reached so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Around the curved walls, hundreds of alien delegates sat in their special seats, each designed for their particular body type. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that human eyes could barely understand what they were seeing. At the center of it all sat the Council's ruling body. Empress Zephyr of the Valdari floated above her crystal throne, her body made of what looked like living starlight. When she moved, colors shifted across her form like aurora dancing in the sky. Beside her, Speaker Thane of the Hegemony sat perfectly, still, his crystalline body catching and reflecting the room's lights in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "The charges have been read," Empress Zephyr said, her voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "Humanity stands accused of developing weapons of mass destruction without Council approval. More specifically, quantum fold technology that could destroy entire star systems." Captain Minho felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm when he spoke. "Your Majesty, those weapons were built to defend Earth from the Void Swarm. We had no choice." "No choice?" Speaker Thane's voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "You had the choice to request Council assistance. You had the choice to follow proper procedures. Instead, you acted alone, as your species always does." Dr. Jiho stepped forward slightly. "Honored Speaker, by the time we could have gone through Council procedures, Earth would have been consumed. The Void Swarm does not wait for paperwork." A murmur ran through the chamber as the various alien delegates discussed this among themselves. Some species made clicking sounds, others whistled, and a few communicated through flashing lights. The translation devices worked overtime to convert all these different forms of speech into something everyone could understand. Counselor Riven of the Axiom Collective stood up from his seat near the back of the chamber. He was tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished metal and eyes that glowed with a cold blue light. "The human response to the Void Swarm threat demonstrates exactly why they are dangerous," he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "They face a problem and immediately turn to violence. They build weapons first and ask questions later." "We saved our world," Admiral Yuna said, speaking for the first time since the hearing began. "And we shared our research with the Council immediately afterward. We held nothing back." "That is not the point," Empress Zephyr replied, her starlight form flickering with what might have been irritation. "The point is that humanity consistently acts without considering the consequences to others. Your quantum fold weapons could be reverse-engineered by hostile forces. Your research could lead to an arms race that destroys the peace we have worked so hard to maintain." Dr. Jiho held up his data device. "Your Majesty, if I may present our findings about the Void Swarms." "Behavior patterns." "No," Speaker Thane interrupted, his crystalline body ringing like a struck bell. "We have heard enough scientific explanations. This hearing is not about the Void Swarm. It is about humanity's inability to function as part of a civilized galactic community." Captain Minho looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. Some looked sympathetic, but most seemed either indifferent or openly hostile. He realized that the outcome of this hearing had been decided long before he and his companions had arrived. "You judge us for being different," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "But our differences are what saved Earth. Our willingness to take risks, to try new approaches, to act quickly when others would debate. These are not flaws. They are strengths." They are chaos, Counselor Riven replied coldly. The galaxy has known peace for 1,000 years because we follow rules, protocols, and established procedures. Humanity threatens that stability with every action they take. Admiral. Yuna stepped forward, her hand moving instinctively to the ceremonial sword at her side. It had belonged to her great-grandmother, a warrior from Earth's ancient past. You speak of peace, but it is the peace of stagnation. When was the last time any council species made a major scientific breakthrough? When did any of you last explore unknown regions of space? You have traded progress for safety, and now you want to force us to do the same. Enough, Empress Zephyr said, her form brightening until it was painful to look at directly. The human delegates will be silent while the council reaches its decision. The chamber fell quiet except for the soft sounds of the various life support systems and the occasional whisper of communication between delegates. The humans stood in the center of it all, 3 small figures surrounded by the combined might of 1,000 worlds. The decision did not take long. When Empress Zephyr spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The Galactic Council finds humanity guilty of violating the Weapons Development Accords, the Unilateral Action Protocols, and the Civilized Species Conduct Guidelines. More fundamentally, we find that humanity is incompatible with civilized galactic society. Dr. Jiho felt his hands shake as he realized what was coming. Admiral Yuna's grip tightened on her sword hilt. Captain Minho simply stared at the floating form of Empress Zephyr, waiting for the words that would change everything. Therefore, she continued, humanity is hereby banished from council space. All human vessels, installations, and personnel must depart beyond the outer rim within 30 standard days. Any human found in council territory after that time will be considered an invader and dealt with accordingly. Furthermore, Speaker Thane added, his voice ringing with finality, this banishment shall remain in effect for 1,000 years. Humanity may petition for readmission to galactic society after that time, provided they can demonstrate that they have learned to behave in a civilized manner. The chamber erupted in noise as delegates reacted to the verdict. Some species celebrated, others protested, and a few simply sat in stunned silence. Through it all, the 3 humans stood perfectly still, processing what they had just heard. Captain Minho was the first to move. He stepped forward and gave a formal bow to the council leadership. We understand the verdict, he said clearly. We will comply with the order to leave council space. However, Admiral Yuna added, her voice carrying a note of steel that made several delegates look uncomfortable. Do not mistake our compliance for acceptance. You banish us because you fear what we might become. Perhaps you are right to be afraid. With that, the 3 humans turned and walked toward the chamber's exit. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence that had fallen over the hall. As they reached the doors, Dr. Jiho paused and looked back at the assembled delegates. You judge us for being unpredictable, he said quietly, but his words carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. But unpredictability is how species evolve, how they grow, how they survive when the impossible happens. You may have banished chaos from your perfect order, but chaos has a way of finding new places to grow. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss, leaving the council chamber in uncomfortable silence. An hour later, Captain Minho stood on the bridge of his ship, the Taeguk, watching as the human fleet prepared to depart. There were not many ships. Humanity was still a young species compared to most council members. But each vessel carried families, scientists, engineers, and soldiers who had dedicated their lives to exploring the galaxy and protecting their homeworld. Admiral Yuna joined him at the observation window. Any regrets? She asked quietly. Minho considered the question as he watched Earth's sun grow smaller in the distance. About building the weapons? No. About saving our world? Never. About trusting the Council to understand why we did what we had to do? He shook his head. That was naive of us. So what now? Dr. Jiho asked, entering the bridge with his latest calculations. We have 30 days to reach the outer rim. After that, we are on our own in uncharted space. Admiral Yuna smiled, and for the first time since the hearing began, it was not a sad expression. Then we do what humans have always done when faced with the unknown. We explore it, we learn from it, and we make it our home. As the human fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading for the edge of known civilization, none of them could have imagined what they would find in the darkness beyond the rim. They thought they were going into exile. They had no idea they were going toward their destiny. 25 years had passed since the human ships crossed into the unknown space beyond the outer rim. The stars here were different. They burned brighter and stranger colors than the ones back home. Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of her massive ship, the New Soul, watching the endless darkness outside. Her hair was gray now, and lines marked her face, but her eyes still held the same fire that had carried humanity through their darkest hour. The New Soul was not the same ship that had left Earth space all those years ago. It had grown. Piece by piece, the humans had built onto it, adding new sections, new decks, new living spaces. What started as a military vessel had become a floating city. Thousands of people lived inside its metal walls. Children who had never seen Earth ran through its corridors, playing games their parents had taught them from memories of home. Commander Doyun was one of those children, though he was no longer young. He had been barely 20 when the exile began. Now he led scouting missions to find new worlds where humans could live. His ship, the Explorer, was fast and quiet. It could slip past dangerous areas and map safe routes for the larger vessels to follow. On this particular morning, Do-yoon was preparing for another mission. His crew was small but skilled. They had learned to work together over many years of flying into the unknown. As they prepared to leave, Admiral Yuna called him to her private office. "Be careful out there," she said, handing him a data pad with their latest intelligence. "We've been picking up strange signals from the Kepler sector. Something is out there, but we don't know what." Doyun nodded and took the pad. He had learned to trust the Admiral's instincts. She had kept them alive for 25 years when everyone said it was impossible. If she was worried about something, he would take it seriously. The Explorer left the New Soul and jumped into hyperspace. The journey to the Kepler sector took 3 days. When they arrived, Doyun's instruments immediately picked up the signals Admiral Yuna had mentioned. They were coming from a planet that should have been dead. The star in this system was old and weak. Any life here should have died long ago. But as they got closer, Doyun saw something amazing. The planet was covered in strange structures. They were huge, made of some kind of metal that his scanners couldn't identify. The buildings reached up into the sky like fingers, twisted and beautiful. But there were no life signs. Whatever had built these things was long gone. "Take us down," Doyun ordered his pilot. "But stay ready to leave fast if we need to." The Explorer landed in a clearing near one of the largest structures. Doyun and 2 of his crew put on their environment suits and stepped outside. The air was thin but breathable. The gravity was lighter than Earth normal. As they walked toward the nearest building, Doyun felt a strange tingling in his suit's sensors. The entrance to the building was an arch that seemed to shimmer like water. As they approached, it opened without any visible mechanism. Inside, the walls glowed with a soft blue light. Strange symbols covered every surface, moving and changing as they watched. "Captain," said Ensign Kiwoo, his voice excited over the comm. "These symbols, I think they're some kind of mathematical language. Look at this pattern." Doyun followed Kiwoo to a wall where the symbols were particularly complex. As the young officer pointed to different parts of the pattern, Doyun began to see what he meant. There was a logic to it, a structure that reminded him of the advanced mathematics he had studied at the academy. They spent hours exploring the building, recording everything they could. In the deepest chamber, they found something that made Doyun's heart race. It was a device, clearly some kind of machine, but unlike anything humans had ever built. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. When they returned to the new Seoul, Admiral Yuna called together her best scientists. Dr. Jiho was old now, but his mind was still sharp. His daughter, Dr. Sora, had taken over much of his work. She was brilliant in her own right, with new ideas that sometimes surprised even her father. "This technology is incredible," Dr. Sora said after studying Doyun's recordings. "These people, whoever they were, they knew things we're just beginning to understand. Their quantum mechanics are centuries ahead of ours." Dr. Jiho nodded slowly. "But where did they go? A civilization this advanced doesn't just disappear." The answer came from an unexpected source. Engineer Wu Sung, who maintained the ship's systems, had been studying the mathematical patterns Kiwoo had found. He was not a scientist, but he understood machines better than anyone. "These aren't just building plans," he said, spreading his work across a table in the main conference room. "They're warnings. Look at this sequence here. It keeps repeating. And this symbol, I've seen something like it before." He called up an old file on his computer. It was a report from Earth, from the days before the exile. It showed similar symbols found in the wreckage of ships that had been attacked by the Void Swarm. The room went quiet. Everyone remembered the Void Swarm. They were the reason humanity had built the quantum fold weapons that had led to their exile. Strange creatures from deep space that consumed everything in their path. Earth scientists had managed to drive them away, but barely. "You're saying these people were destroyed by the same things that attacked Earth?" Admiral Yuna asked. Wusung nodded grimly. "And according to these patterns, the swarm is still out there, still growing, still hungry." Dr. Sora studied the data for days. What she found was both exciting and terrifying. The ancient people, who she had begun calling the architects, had developed technology that could help humanity survive almost anywhere. They had learned to change their own bodies to live on different worlds. They had built machines that could think and learn. They had even found ways to travel between stars faster than anything humans had imagined. But they had also left warnings. The Void Swarm was not just a random threat. It was something ancient and evil that moved through the galaxy like a plague. It had destroyed the architects despite all their advanced technology. And according to the final messages they had left behind, it was growing stronger. As the months passed, more human ships arrived in the Kepler sector. Word of the discovery had spread throughout the scattered fleet. People came to see the architect ruins and to learn from their technology. Soon, the planet had a permanent human settlement. Colony leader Hayok arrived with his agricultural ships. He was amazed to find that the architect technology could help plants grow in soil that should have been barren. His crops flourished like nothing anyone had seen before. Mining Chief Sua brought her extraction teams to study the metal the architects had used. It was stronger than anything in human databases and seemed to repair itself when damaged. Her teams found vast deposits of rare minerals in the planet's crust, wealth beyond imagining. But it was young scientist Kiwoo who made the most important discovery. Working day and night in the deepest architect chambers, he learned to read, their mathematical language. And what he read changed everything. The architects had not just been destroyed by the Void Swarm. They had been preparing for something much worse. The swarm was just the beginning, the first wave of something that came from beyond the known galaxy. The final architect messages spoke of a darkness so complete that it would consume all light, all life, all hope. Admiral Yuna listened to Kiwoo's report in her private quarters. Outside her window, she could see the lights of human ships spread across the star system. Families were building new lives here. Children were being born who would know this place as home. "How long do we have?" she asked. Kiwoo's young face was pale. According to the architect calculations, the next wave should arrive in about 50 years. Maybe less. Admiral Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to her desk. She picked up her communications device and opened a channel to all human ships in the system. "Attention all vessels," she said, her voice calm and strong. "This is Admiral Yuna. We have learned much from our new friends, the architects. We have found technology that will help us survive and grow. But we have also learned that our exile may have been a blessing in disguise. We are no longer just refugees running from home. We are pioneers with a purpose. We have work to do, and not much. Time to do it." She paused, looking out at the stars that had become their new home. "The Galactic Council banished us because they feared what we might become. They were right to be afraid. We are going to become something they never imagined. We are going to build an empire that will protect this galaxy when the darkness comes, and we start today." 50 years had passed since Admiral Yuna first spoke those words about building an empire. She was gone now, having died peacefully in her sleep 10 years earlier. But her dream lived on in ways that even she could not have imagined. Emperor. Doyen stood on the balcony of his palace on New Terra, looking out over a city that stretched to the horizon. The buildings were tall and beautiful, made from the self-repairing metal the architects had left behind. Gardens filled with plants from 100 different worlds created splashes of color between the silver towers. Flying vehicles moved smoothly through the air, carrying people to work and play in the greatest city humanity had ever built. It was hard to believe that this world had once been a ball of rock and ice. When the first human settlers had arrived 30 years ago, New Terra had been barely livable. But Dr. Sora's bio-adaptive technology had changed everything. The same science that allowed humans to live comfortably on alien worlds had been used to transform New Terra itself. Now it was a garden paradise where the weather was always perfect and the harvests never failed. Doyen was no longer the young commander who had first discovered the architect ruins. His hair was silver now, and he moved with the careful dignity of a man who had learned to carry great responsibility. He wore simple clothes, not the fancy robes that other rulers might choose. He believed that a leader should look like the people he served. "Your Majesty," came a voice from behind him. Doyen turned to see his wife, Empress Sora, approaching with a data pad in her hands. She was still beautiful, though her dark hair now had streaks of gray. Her mind remained as sharp as ever, perhaps sharper. The years of building an empire had taught her things no textbook could contain. "The morning reports," she said, handing him the pad. "Grand Admiral Kiwu sends word from the border fleets. 3 more council systems have requested permission to join the Dominion. The Zarathi hive ships have arrived safely at their new colony world, and Engineer Wusung says the new Nexus stations will be online within the month." Doyen smiled as he read through the reports. It still amazed him how much the human empire had grown. What had started as a few thousand refugees had become something that ruled over 200 worlds. Billions of people, not all of them human, now lived under the protection of the human stellar dominion. The growth had not been through conquest. Doyen was proud of that fact. Unlike the Galactic Council, which had expanded by forcing weaker species to submit, the human empire grew because people wanted to join it. They came seeking freedom, opportunity, and protection from the dangers that lurked in deep space. The Zarathi had been the first. These insect-like beings had lived in the Council territories for centuries, but they had always been treated as second-class citizens. Their hive mind society was seen as primitive by the Council, even though their technology was actually quite advanced. When Council forces had tried to force them to adopt individual thinking, the Zarathi had rebelled. The war had been brutal. The Council had superior weapons, but the Zarathi fought with the coordination that only a hive mind could achieve. Neither side seemed able to win a final victory. That was when Ambassador Nari, a former Council diplomat who had chosen exile, with humanity years earlier, had approached the Zarathi with an offer. "Join us," she had said. "Keep your hive mind. Keep your culture. We only ask that you help us build something better than what came before." The Zarathi had been suspicious at first. Why should they trust these strange mammals who had been banished by the very council they were fighting? But when they saw how humans had integrated with other refugee species, when they learned about the technology and resources the Dominion could offer, they had agreed to try. Now, 5 years later, Zarathi efficiency ran much of the Empire's logistics. Their ability to coordinate thousands of workers without any confusion had made construction projects possible that would have taken other species decades to complete. In return, they had been given rich worlds to colonize and the freedom to live as they chose. The Lumerians had come next. These beings of pure energy had no physical bodies, existing as patterns of light and thought. The Council had never known what to do with them. They could not be controlled like other species because they had no need for physical resources. They could not be threatened because they had no bodies to hurt. So the Council had mostly ignored them, treating them as curiosities rather than true citizens. But the Lumerians had gifts that the human empire desperately needed. They understood stellar engineering in ways that no other species could match. They could work inside the hearts of stars, building massive energy collectors and stellar forges. When Agricultural Minister Hiok had needed more energy to power his planet-wide farms, the Lumerians had built artificial suns to provide it. Resource Director Sua had worked closely with the Lumerians to establish mining operations that could extract materials from gas giants and asteroid fields. The wealth flowing into human space was beyond anything the Council had ever dreamed of. Rare elements that had once been worth their weight in platinum were now common as iron. But it was Chief Engineer Wu Sung's Nexus network that had truly made the Empire possible. The quantum communication system allowed instant contact across vast distances. A message sent from New Terra could reach the furthest colonies without any delay. This meant that the Empire could actually be governed as a single entity rather than a collection of independent systems. The Nexus stations were marvels of engineering. Each one was built around an architect quantum core powered by Lumerian energy collectors and operated by Zarathi technicians. They formed a web of communication that connected every world in the Dominion. But they were more than just communication devices. They could also transport materials instantly from one system to another. A shortage of medical supplies on a frontier world could be solved in minutes rather than months. Grand Admiral Kiwu commanded the Imperial fleet from his flagship, the Architect's Dream. The ships under his command were unlike anything that had ever flown before. They used technology that blended human innovation with architect science and alien engineering. They could travel faster than Council ships, fight harder, and repair themselves after battle. But Kiwu had never used the fleet for conquest. His ships protected trade routes, rescued ships in distress, and kept the peace between different species. When pirates attacked merchant vessels, the Imperial fleet was there to stop them. When natural disasters struck colony worlds, the fleet carried relief supplies. When the Void Swarm had appeared at the edge of human space 5 years earlier, the fleet had been ready. The battle had been brief but intense. The swarm creatures were larger than they had been when they attacked Earth decades earlier. They had clearly learned from their encounters with other species. But human technology had advanced even more. The quantum weapons that had once caused humanity's exile were toys compared to the arsenal Kiwu now commanded. The swarm ships had been destroyed before they could reach any inhabited worlds, but their appearance had reminded everyone why the Empire existed. The darkness that the architects had warned about was still coming. Humanity and their allies needed to be ready. Emperor Doyun finished reading the reports and handed the pad back to his wife. In a few hours, he would need to address the Galactic Assembly, the governing body that represented all the species in the Dominion. They would discuss plans for new colonies, trade agreements with independent systems, and preparations for the threats that might come from deep space. But for now, he simply stood with Sora on their balcony, watching their city. Wake up for another day. In the distance, He could see ships landing and taking off from the spaceport. Some carried families moving to new homes on frontier worlds. Others brought rare goods from the far reaches of the Empire. Still others carried diplomats and scientists, working to keep the peace and push the boundaries of knowledge. "Do you think Admiral Yuna would be proud?" Sora asked quietly. Doyon considered the question. The old admiral had dreamed of building something that could protect the galaxy from the coming darkness. But even she might have been surprised by what they had actually created. The human stellar dominion was not just a military alliance or a trading partnership. It was a true civilization where different species worked together as equals. "I think she would be amazed," Doyon said finally. "We've built something beyond what any of us imagined. An empire without slaves, a government without tyranny, a military that protects instead of conquers." Sora smiled and took his hand. "And we've only just begun. The galaxy is vast, and there are still so many people who need our help." As if to prove her point, a communication alert chimed from inside the palace. Ambassador Nari appeared on the wall screen, calling from her office in the Galactic Assembly Building. "Your Majesties," she said, her voice excited. "We've just received a message from the Council territories. 3 more star systems want to join the Dominion. And there's something else. Our deep space scouts have made contact with another group of refugees. They're fleeing something in the galactic core. Something they say makes the Void Swarm look harmless." Doyon and Sora exchanged glances. The empire they had built was strong, but it seemed that new challenges were always appearing. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had once been the most impressive room in known space. Its crystal walls reached high into the sky, and holographic displays showed the locations of thousands of member worlds. But now many of those displays were dark. Entire sectors had gone silent. Some had been destroyed by unknown enemies. Others had simply declared independence and stopped answering council communications. Empress Zephyr of the Valdari stood before the nearly empty assembly chamber. Where once hundreds of delegates had gathered to debate the fate of the galaxy, now only a few dozen remained. Her ethereal form flickered with distress as she looked at the faces of those who had stayed loyal to the council. They were all afraid, though most tried to hide it. Speaker Thane of the crystalline hegemony stepped forward, his body chiming like broken glass with each movement. "The situation grows worse each day," he announced, his voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "The Antarian Empire has fallen to something they called the hunger from beyond. The Nexari Republic's last message spoke of ships that seemed to eat starlight itself, and the frontier worlds report strange signals coming from the galactic rim." Council Intelligence Director Vex moved to the center of the chamber. His people were masters of information gathering, and what he had learned made his blood run cold. "The humans," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything leads back to the humans." The few remaining delegates turned to stare at him. Vex activated his personal display, showing intelligence reports that had taken years to gather. 75 years ago, we banished humanity beyond the outer rim," he continued. "We thought we were protecting the galaxy from their dangerous unpredictability. But we were wrong. We were not protecting the galaxy from them. We were protecting them from us." The display showed star maps that made the delegates gasp in shock. Beyond the outer rim, where the council believed there was only empty space and death, a vast empire had grown. Hundreds of systems glowed with the light of civilization. Trade routes connected distant sectors. Massive shipyards produced vessels that dwarfed anything in council space. "The human stellar dominion," Vex said, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. "They have built something we never imagined possible. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their military could destroy our entire fleet without losing a single ship. Their economy produces more wealth in a single year than our core worlds generate in a decade." Empress Zephyr's form flickered faster as she processed this information. "How is this possible? They were refugees, exiles. They had nothing when we banished them. Director Vex brought up another display showing intercepted communications from human space. They found something out there, ancient ruins belonging to a species they call the Architects. The technology they discovered has transformed them from survivors into empire builders. The images that followed showed wonders beyond imagining. Worlds that had been transformed from barren rock into garden paradises. Cities that floated in the clouds of gas giants, stellar forges that could create new elements by restructuring the hearts of stars, ships that could travel between galaxies in a matter of days. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. The final intelligence report showed species that had once been loyal council members now flying under human flags. The Zarathi hives, the Lumerian energy beings, even some Valdari colonies had joined the human dominion. They are not conquering these worlds, Vex explained. The species are going to them willingly. They offer something we never have, true equality and partnership. Speaker Thane's crystalline body rang with a sound like breaking bells. But why should we care what the humans have built? Let them have their empire beyond the rim. We have more immediate concerns. That was when Director Vex delivered the final blow. Because the threats we face are coming from human space, the void swarm, the hunger from beyond, the signals from the rim. They are all connected. The humans know something we do not, and I believe they are the only ones who can save us. Meanwhile, in the capital city of New Terra, Emperor Doyen was dealing with his own crisis. The throne room was filled with his most trusted advisors, all looking grim as they studied the latest reports from Grand Admiral Kiwu. The attacks are getting stronger, Kiwu reported, his weathered face showing the strain of constant warfare. These new void swarm creatures are not like the ones we faced before. They learn from every battle, they adapt, and they are spreading faster than we can stop them. Dr. Sora stepped forward, her scientific mind working through the implications. The architect warnings were correct. The original swarm was just a scouting force. What we face now is the real invasion. She activated the holographic display in the center of the room. It showed the spiral arm of the galaxy, with red markers indicating swarm activity. The pattern was clearly planned, not random. The creatures were moving systematically, consuming entire star systems as they advanced. They are not just eating matter and energy, Dr. Sora continued. They are absorbing information. Every civilization they destroy makes them smarter. They now possess technologies from dozens of extinct species. Engineer Wusung looked up from his tablet, where he had been analyzing the latest battle recordings. The ships that attacked the Kepler outpost yesterday used weapons I've never seen before, some kind of beam that could dissolve molecular bonds, and their hull material seemed to repair itself using our own weapon's energy. Emperor Doyen listened to the reports with growing concern. The human stellar dominion had grown strong over the decades, but this new threat was unlike anything they had faced before. The swarm was not just an enemy to be defeated. It was a force of nature, like a cosmic plague that consumed everything in its path. How long until they reach the core systems? He asked. Grand Admiral Kiwu consulted his tactical displays. At their current rate of advance, they will reach the outer colonies within 6 months. New Terra itself could be under attack within 2 years. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The empire they had built, the civilization they had created, could be destroyed before they found a way to stop the swarm. That was when Ambassador Nari entered the room. Her face was pale, and she carried a communication device that was flashing with urgent messages. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice barely steady, "we have received a formal communication from the Galactic Council. They are requesting an audience." Doyen raised an eyebrow. In all the years since the exile, the Council had never acknowledged the existence of the human dominion. Now, suddenly, they wanted to talk. "What do they want?" he asked. Nari activated the communication device. The image of Empress Zephyr appeared, her ethereal form looking more fragmented than usual. When she spoke, her voice carried a desperation that surprised everyone in the room. "Emperor Doyen of the human stellar dominion," she began, the words clearly difficult for her to say. "I am Empress Zephyr of the Valdari, speaking for what remains of the Galactic Council. We come to you not as rulers, but as beings facing extinction." The message continued with intelligence reports about the Council's failing defenses and the approaching threats, but it was the final part that made everyone in the throne room stop breathing. "We formally request the restoration of humanity's place in the Galactic Council," Zephyr said. "In exchange, we ask for your protection against the forces that threaten all life in this galaxy. We know we have no right to ask this of you after what we did. But we also know that you are the only ones with the power to save us." When the message ended, the throne room remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Emperor Doyen stood and walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. In the distance, he could see human children playing in parks while their alien friends learned alongside them in the schools of New Terra. This was what they had built, a society where different species could live together as equals. But that society was now threatened by forces that might destroy everything they had created. "Prepare a response," Doyun said finally, turning back to face his advisors. "Tell the Council that I will consider their request, but make it clear that any discussion will be on our terms, not theirs." Grand Admiral Kiwu stepped forward. "Your Majesty, do you really think we should trust them? They banished us when we were weak. Now they come crawling back when they need us." Doyen nodded slowly. "You are right to be suspicious, old friend. But we are not doing this for them. We are doing this for everyone else. The Swarm does not care about politics or history. It will consume Council worlds and Dominion worlds with equal hunger. If we are going to stop it, we need every ship, every weapon, every mind working together." He paused, looking around the room at the faces of people who had helped build an empire from nothing. "Besides," he said with a slight smile, "I want them to see what we have become. When the Council representatives arrive, they will learn that the weak refugees they banished have grown into something they never imagined. They will see that we have built a better civilization than they ever managed, and they will understand that the future of the galaxy no longer belongs to them." Dr. Sora moved to stand beside her husband. "The architect ruins on Kepler contained more than just warnings about the Swarm," she said quietly. "There were also blueprints for weapons that could stop it." The final battle for the galaxy began on a Tuesday morning, though such earthly measurements of time seemed meaningless when entire star systems hung in the balance. Grand Admiral Kiwu stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Architect's Legacy, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for war. The ship around him was a marvel that still amazed him even after 5 years of commanding it. Built around an actual architect quantum core, the Legacy was more than just a warship. It was a piece of living technology that could repair itself, adapt to new threats, and coordinate the actions of thousands of other vessels simultaneously. Its hull was made from the same self-healing metal found in the ancient ruins, but enhanced with human engineering and powered by Lumerian energy systems. Through the main view screen, Kiwu could see the incredible sight of humanity's true military might. Ships stretched from horizon to horizon, their numbers beyond easy counting. There were sleek human destroyers, with their quantum cannons gleaming in the starlight. Massive Zarathi hive ships moved in perfect formation, their insectoid crews working as one mind. Lumerian energy vessels flickered between dimensions, ready to strike from unexpected angles. Even former council ships flew in the formation, their crews having chosen to serve under human command rather than face the swarm alone. But the enemy they faced was equally impressive in its terrible way. The Void Swarm had evolved far beyond the creatures that had once threatened Earth. These new bioships were the size of small moons, their living hulls pulsing with absorbed technologies from dozens of consumed civilizations. They moved through space like a plague, leaving nothing but empty vacuum behind them. "Admiral," came the voice of Captain Sua from her position at the tactical station. "Long-range sensors are picking up the swarm's main fleet. Estimated time to contact 4 hours." Kiwu nodded grimly. 4 hours to prepare for a battle that would determine whether civilization survived or died. He opened a communication channel. "To all ships in the fleet. This is Grand Admiral Kiwu to all vessels," he announced, his voice carrying across the quantum network to every bridge in the fleet. "Today we fight not as humans or Zarathi or Lumerians, but as citizens of the galaxy. The enemy before us has consumed entire species, but they have never faced anything like us. They think they understand us because they have eaten our enemies. They are wrong. Today, they learn what it means to face a united galaxy." On New Terra, far from the battle lines, Dr. Sora was making final preparations for what might be the most important scientific experiment in galactic history. The quantum beacon array stretched across an entire continent, its massive towers reaching into the sky like metal trees. Each tower was built around architect technology, powered by captured starlight, and connected to a network that spanned the entire galaxy. The theory was simple, even if the execution was incredibly complex. The Void Swarm operated as a collective consciousness, with each creature connected to every other through quantum entanglement. If that connection could be severed, the individual creatures would become confused, lost, and vulnerable to conventional weapons. But creating a quantum disruption field large enough to affect the entire swarm would require enormous energy and a human mind connected directly to the array. Dr. Sora had volunteered for the task, knowing that the neural strain would likely kill her. Emperor Doyen stood beside her as she made final adjustments to the control systems. His face showed the strain of the past few days, but his voice remained calm and confident. "Are you certain this will work?" he asked. Sora smiled at her husband, though her hands shook slightly as she worked. "The mathematics are sound. The architect, data confirms it. And engineer Wusung has checked every connection 3 times. It will work. The question is whether I can survive long enough to complete the activation sequence." In space, the first contact between the fleets had begun. Kiwus. Scouts reported that the swarm creatures were moving in patterns they had never seen before. The bioships seemed to flow like liquid, changing formation constantly and attacking from multiple directions at once. "They have learned from every battle they have fought," observed Tactical Officer Hayok. "They are using strategies absorbed from the Antarian Empire, weapons copied from the Nexari Republic, and coordination techniques that look like modified Zarathi hive tactics." The first exchange of fire lit up space like a new star being born. Human quantum cannons lanced out in beams of pure energy, while swarm bioships responded with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Some fired black holes that devoured everything in their path. Others released clouds of nanomachines that tried to convert enemy ships into more swarm creatures, but the combined fleet had advantages the swarm had never encountered. Lumerian energy beings could phase through solid matter, appearing inside enemy ships to disrupt their nervous systems. Zarathi coordination allowed hundreds of ships to move as a single organism, attacking weak points with surgical precision, and human unpredictability kept the enemy guessing, never allowing them to fully adapt to new tactics. The battle raged for hours, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Ships on both sides were destroyed, their debris adding to the chaos of the combat zone. But slowly, grimly, Kiwu began to realize that conventional weapons were not enough. The swarm was simply too large, too adaptable, too relentless. That was when the message came from New Terra. Dr. Sora's voice crackled through the quantum communication network, strained but determined. Admiral, this is Dr. Sora. The quantum beacon array is ready for activation. I need you to withdraw your forces to a safe distance and prepare for a galaxy-wide quantum pulse. Kiwu felt his heart skip a beat. He had known this moment would come, but that did not make it easier. Sora was not just the Empire's chief scientist. She was a friend, a leader, and the Emperor's wife. Her sacrifice would save the galaxy, but the cost was almost too high to bear. Understood, Dr. Sora, he replied, his voice carefully controlled. All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance. Prepare for quantum disruption field activation. On New Terra, Dr. Sora placed her hands on the neural interface that would connect her mind to the quantum beacon array. The moment she made contact, pain shot through her skull like lightning. She could feel the vast network awakening, quantum towers across hundreds of worlds beginning to resonate in harmony. The strain was incredible. Her mind was suddenly connected to devices spread across light years of space, trying to coordinate. Energies that could tear apart the fabric of reality itself. Blood ran from her nose as she fought to maintain control, to shape the quantum field that would sever the swarm's collective consciousness. Sora! Emperor Doyen reached for her, but she shook her head. Do not touch me, she gasped. Any disruption now could destabilize the entire array. Through the neural link, she could sense the swarm creatures in space. Their minds were alien, hungry, driven by an endless need to consume and grow. But underneath that alien thought, she could feel the quantum threads that connected them, the invisible bonds that made them stronger than the sum of their parts. With a mental effort that sent agony through every nerve in her body, Dr. Sora began to unravel those connections. In space, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The swarm bioships suddenly stopped their coordinated attacks. Individual creatures began to drift apart, their formation dissolving into chaos. Some fired randomly at empty space. Others turned on their own allies, no longer recognizing them as part of the collective. Grand Admiral Kiwu did not waste the opportunity. All ships, attack! Target the larger bioships first. Do not let them regroup. The combined fleet struck like a sword of light, their weapons finding targets that could no longer coordinate their defenses. Swarm creatures that had seemed invincible minutes earlier were destroyed by concentrated fire from ships working in perfect harmony. But the victory came at a terrible price. On New Terra, Dr. Sora collapsed as the quantum disruption field reached its peak. The neural strain had pushed her brain beyond its limits. Emperor Doyen caught her as she fell, tears streaming down his face. "Did it work?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes," he said, holding her close. "The swarm is defeated. You saved us all." She smiled one last time, then closed her eyes forever. The aftermath of the battle was both triumphant and somber. The Void Swarm, deprived of their collective consciousness, had been completely destroyed. The galaxy was safe from the ancient threat that had consumed so many civilizations, but the cost of victory weighed heavily on everyone who had fought for it. In the weeks that followed, representatives from across the galaxy traveled to New Terra for Dr. Sora's funeral. Former enemies stood together to honor the woman who had saved them all. Empress Zephyr and Speaker Thane formally dissolved the Galactic Council, requesting membership in the human stellar dominion that had proven itself worthy of leading the Galaxy. Emperor Doyen accepted their request, but made it clear that the new galactic government would be built on principles of equality and cooperation, not domination. The Galactic Assembly was expanded to include representatives from every species, with decisions made by consensus rather than decree.